Good morning, class! So last meeting, we discussed the Newton's first law and second law of motion. Can anyone explain to me what is first law all about?
Ma'am, as far as I remember, Newton's first law of motion is also called as the law of inertia, where it states that an object at rest remains at rest, and an object that is moving will continue to move straight and with constant velocity, if and only if there is no net force acting upon that object. Also, Newton's first law describes objects that are in two different situations. Number one is the object that is stationary, and the second one is the objects that are moving straight at a constant speed. So Newton observed that objects in both situations will only change their speed if a net force is applied to them. Thank you po.
Correct! Newton's first law states that if a body is at rest or moving at a constant speed in a straight line, it will remain at rest or keep moving in a straight line at constant speed, unless it is acted upon by a force. So how about the second law of motion? Can anyone explain to me?
Ma'am, I also know that Newton's second law of motion is a quantitative description of the changes that a force can produce on the motion of a body. It states that the time rate of change of the momentum of a body is equal in both magnitude and direction to the force imposed on it, and the momentum of a body is equal to the product of its mass and its velocity.
You are correct also. Very good. The second law states that the acceleration of an object is dependent upon two variables: the net force acting upon the object and the mass of the object. The acceleration of an object depends directly upon the net force acting upon an object and inversely proportional upon the mass of the object. As the force acting upon an object is increased, the acceleration of the object is also increased. And as the mass of an object is increased, the acceleration of the object is decreased. And it seems that you already know the first and second law. Now we will proceed to the third law of motion. But before that, let us have first a simple game which we call a tag of war. So what you're going to do is you will be divided into two teams or group. Then each team pulls as hard as they can to try to make the other team fall or pull the handkerchief over a designated line. So the last team standing wins. 1, 2, 3, go! Okay, the left team wins. When the other team pulled against you, did you feel the opposite reaction? So yeah, in this activity or game, you experience the push and pull of forces, exploring the Newton's third law of motion, which is our topic for today. Yeah, our topic for today is the forces and the Newton's third law of motion. It formally stated as, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So according to Newton, whenever objects A and B interact with each other, they exert forces upon each other. So when you sit in your chair right now, your body exerts a downward force on the chair, and the chair exerts an upward force on your body. So there are two forces resulting from this interaction. The number one is a force on the chair, and the second one is a force on your body. So these two forces are called the action and reaction forces and are the subject of Newton's third law of motion. So in the previous game, the rope is the means to transfer forces. The first team to tag is the action first, and causing the pull on the rope and as the reaction first, the other team's rope in and fills the pool. And if the second team initiates a pull, this is a second action force.
Let us proceed from our activity. So here, I prepared some pictures which are the applications of the third law of motions. And what you're going to do is to guess and explain what happens from the objects, the actions or the reaction force pairs. Oh, okay, it's a clear class? Okay, thank you. So, first picture. Who can guess and explain what happened from the blocks? Based on the picture po, we can apply the law of interactions in the sense that as the ground pushes the force upward while the blocks pushes the force downward, there is the interactions in the opposite direction. That's a good point. So as you can see, the block's weight pushes on the ground and the ground pushes back on the block, which means that there is a applications of the third law of motions wherein for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The second picture, who can guess? On that picture, sir, we can apply the third law of motions between the cannon and the cannonball. So as the cannon exerts too much forces, the cannonball itself will also exert equal to the forces that are being exerted by the cannon. There is a interactions in the opposite direction. Yeah. That's a good point. So as you can see, the cannon exerts a force on the cannonball, and the cannonball exerts an equal and opposite force on the cannon. So now, I will ask one of you to give an example of the third law of motions in real life situations. Can you give? Sir, I can use the movie titled The Movie in which there is a scene that the robot chooses the fire extinguisher as the propulsion system. Oh, that's a good point. It is good that you still remember the movie about the Wall-E, in which, as you stated, you observe from the scene wherein the robot uses the fire extinguisher as a propulsion system. So, another good example from this is the garden hose dancing around the yard. It is moving because of the force of water running through it. So another example is this. Who can explain and know the action and reaction force pairs? On that space shuttle, sir, space shuttle can move outward without exerting forces downward. Yeah. So as you can see, the space shuttle exerts downward force and the reaction force pushes it upwards, wherein there is also a applications of the third law of motion. So from the last picture, who can guess? On that last picture, sir, two football players interact with each other, equal forces but in opposite direction, which is the main concept of the third law of motion. So, as you can see, the two football players interact with each other, wherein the applications of the third law of motions between the hand, helmet, hand shoulder, ball hand, and even the shoe ground are being applied.
Let's take a recap. Anyone who can explain the Newton's third law of motion?
It is formally stated as for every reaction, there is an equal and opposite reaction. This statement means that in every interaction, there is a pair of forces acting on the two interacting objects. The size of the forces on the first object equals the size of the forces on the second object. That's all.
That is correct. Newton's third law states that when two bodies interact, they apply forces to one another that are equal to the magnitude and opposite in direction. The third law is also known as the law of action and reaction. These fundamental laws of physics describe how forces impact the motion of objects. Without forces, no changes in motion can occur. Understanding forces can be a powerful thing. So, before we proceed, let us first have a simple experiment called Hero's Engine. In this activity or experiment, you will be divided into two groups. You will construct a water-propelled engines out of soft drinks cans and investigate ways to increase action-reaction thrust produced by water shooting out of hose punched in the side of the cans. So, for this experiment, you will be needing an empty aluminum soft drink can per team with both tabs intact, carpenter nails, a string for about 50 cm, a water tab, and a water. For the Hero's Engine demonstration, have handy a soda can, nail, piece of string, and water. Use a nail to poke 4 holes around the base of the empty soda can. When the nail is in each hole, push the nail to the left or to the right to angle the hole so the water will stream out on a tangent to produce crust. Do the same for each hole. For the next step, tie a string to the tab. For the demonstration, fill the can with water and lift it with a string over a sink or tub. So a student can observe the rotational movement of the can spinning as water flows out of the hose.
Welcome to the Okanagan Science Center Online, a safe source for science, which you can do at home. Our next science here has to do with physics. Now, we all know that Newton had laws. It's quite interesting. One of his most interesting laws is action-reaction. He says for every force, there's an opposite force. So a force that's opposite direction, but equal in action. So equal and opposite. What does this mean? It means if you push against something, like the earth or a pop can, it pushes back. This isn't always obvious, but we can make it obvious with an experiment that has its origins about 2,000 years ago. Hieron, or Hero of Alexandria, invented an engine. This engine is a reaction engine. It actually had a ball with a couple nozzles coming out, pointed opposite directions, that could spin, and it was hooked up to steam, so it would spin. We can make a replica of that using a pop can. We need a nail and some water. First thing we do is we poke 3 holes close to the bottom so we have lots of pressure. We poke the hole in, then turn it so the water will come out in that direction. 1 hole, 2 hole. Make sure you turn them the same way. Then 3 hole. Sorry, 3 holes. So now we have a pop can with 3 holes in it. We need something to hold it, so we'll just take a piece of thread, tie it on, to the top. That's a good thing about a pop can. You're pretty much balanced from the top here. I don't think Hero has pop cans to work with. 1 knot, 2 knots. There we go. There's our engine. Now to find its power, we're going to use gravity pulling water. I will now fill the can up with water. As I do, the water will come out the bottom. Hopefully I can do this fast enough that I can lift it up and there'll still be water in it. And it should spin. Here goes nothing. And that's full enough. So the water coming out is pushing. Pushes out, and that pushes back on the can and causes it to spin. Our version of Hero's engine. And it's empty already. You may want to try that over a sink.
To measure your learnings, we will be having a quiz about the current lesson that we have discussed. I have already posted in your Google Classroom the link for your quiz. So, okay, that ends our lesson for today. I hope that you have learned a lot from our discussion. Thank you for your active participation. Keep safe and God bless.